Daniel was a human engineer working far away from Earth. He lived in a busy alien settlement where different species came for trade, work, and healing. Most of the time, Daniel repaired machines that the aliens themselves were too afraid to touch. His hands were steady, his mind sharp, and he never feared strange devices. One evening, he was called into the alien medical hall. They told him the machine that healed bones was broken, and only he could fix it. The hall was wide and glowing, with soft blue lights, strange jars, and alien tools hung from the ceiling. The air smelled of herbs and strange chemicals. Daniel rolled up his sleeves and started working. He connected wires, turned gears, and pressed switches. Everything looked normal until he heard a soft gasp behind him. When he turned, he saw her. A young alien girl stood there, small in size, with soft green skin and bright violet eyes. Her name was Lyra, though Daniel did not know it yet. She had been standing close, curious about what the human was doing. The moment Daniel touched the control panel, the machine came alive. Its lights flared, its arms moved, and strange energy shot out like lightning. The beam struck Lyra. Daniel shouted and rushed to turn the machine off, but the energy had already passed through her body. Her knees shook, her breath quickened, and she stumbled back. Daniel caught her before she fell. Everyone in the hall gasped in shock. At first, Daniel thought she was hurt. He looked at her carefully, checking her arms, her face, her chest. She was not bleeding. She was not screaming. But then something strange happened. Her body changed slightly, her form shifting in a way he did not expect. Her coconuts, as humans might call them, grew larger before his eyes. The alien guards shouted in alarm. They thought the human had attacked her with his hands. They pointed their weapons at Daniel, shouting for him to step back. But Lyra pushed him away softly and covered her chest. With trembling hands, her face turned a deep shade of purple, the color of alien blush. She whispered something so low only Daniel could hear. "Why did you do this, huh?" Daniel raised his hands. "It was an accident," he said. "I didn't mean to touch her." But the crowd did not believe him. They had never seen a human so close to a young alien girl. Whispers filled the hall. "The human is bold," one said. "He touched her," another hissed. Lyra's eyes looked away, but her face burned hotter. Daniel noticed something strange. She was not crying in pain, not even angry. Instead, she looked shy, embarrassed, and almost curious. Her lips trembled as if she wanted to say more. The guards dragged Daniel back, but even as they pulled him away, Lyra kept stealing glances at him. Her blush deepened every time his eyes met hers. Daniel's heart raced. He had repaired dangerous machines before. He had faced sparks, explosions, and even fire, but he had never faced something like this. An alien girl looking at him with such strange emotion. The hall filled with noise. Some called for punishment, others for investigation. But in the middle of all that chaos, Daniel knew one thing. This was no normal accident. Something had begun between them, and it would not end here. The head healer of the hall stepped forward. Her long cloak swept the floor as she pointed at Daniel. "You have done the forbidden," she said. "You touched what no human should touch." Daniel tried to explain again, but his words drowned. In the shouts of the crowd, Lyra stood frozen, her hands still covering herself, her cheeks glowing. No one noticed the way she peeked at him one last time before turning away. The guards pushed Daniel toward the doors. The air outside felt heavy, as if the whole settlement was now watching him. Whispers followed him through the streets. The human made her blush. "The girl will never be the same." Daniel clenched his fists. He had not chosen this, but now he was trapped in it. And deep inside he wondered, why did she not hate him? The night sky above the alien world shimmered with 2 moons. Daniel looked up, feeling the weight of what had happened. He had made a mistake. Yes, but it was more than that. For the first time since he had arrived in this strange colony, he felt like fate had pushed him into something far bigger. The girl's blush haunted his mind, and he knew this was only the beginning of a story he could not escape. The next morning, Daniel woke up with a heavy mind. He had spent the whole night thinking about what happened in the alien medical hall. He could still see her face, the way her cheeks turned purple, the way her eyes lowered. He could still hear the whispers of the crowd calling him shameless, bold, forbidden. Daniel rubbed his tired eyes, wondering if he had just ruined his life on this alien world. When he stepped outside, the settlement was already awake. Merchants were shouting, children ran between stalls, guards marched through the streets. But when Daniel passed by, the noise dimmed. Aliens stopped talking and stared at him. Some muttered under their breath, others shook their heads. A group of women pointed at him and whispered, "That's the human who touched her." Daniel felt their eyes burning holes in his back. He tried to ignore them. He told himself it was just gossip, nothing more. But the more he walked, the clearer it became. Everyone knew. The accident was now a story carried from mouth to mouth, and in every version, he was painted as the bold human who dared to touch a young alien girl. Daniel clenched his jaw, but inside, a question kept twisting. Why? Didn't she hate him? Later that day, Daniel was called to the work hall. The head healer stood waiting for him, her face cold and sharp. "You will not touch our machines again," she declared. "You have brought shame upon us." Daniel wanted to argue, but he held back. He knew nothing he said would change their minds, so he simply nodded and turned away. But before he left, he caught sight of someone small in the corner. It was Lyra. She was standing half-hidden behind a curtain, her fingers clutching the fabric tightly. Her eyes widened when she saw him, and immediately her cheeks flushed purple. She lowered her head, trying to hide her face, but Daniel had already noticed. He froze for a moment, surprised that she was even there. Then the healer barked at him to leave, and Daniel walked out without a word. But the image of Lyra's shy blush stayed in his mind like fire. That evening, when the streets grew quiet and the moons rose high, Daniel sat outside his small home trying to relax. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of alien flowers. He closed his eyes, but suddenly he heard soft footsteps. When he looked up, his breath caught. Lyra was there. She stood a few steps away, wrapped in a thin cloak, her hands trembling. Her violet eyes looked nervous but determined. Daniel stood quickly, unsure what to say. Before he could speak, Lyra whispered, "I should not be here." Her voice was soft, almost like music. "But I needed to see you." Daniel frowned, in confusion. "Why, after what happened, aren't you angry with me?" he asked. Lyra shook her head quickly, her face glowing even brighter. "No, I am not angry," she whispered. "But everyone says you shamed me, that you were cruel." Her voice shook as she went on. "But I know it was an accident." Daniel was stunned. He had expected her to hate him or at least avoid him forever. Instead, she had come secretly at night just to tell him she did not blame him. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Then why did you blush like that? Why look at me the way you did?" Lyra froze, her lips parting in shock. Her hands clutched her cloak tightly and she turned her head away. Her whole face was burning purple now. I don't know," she admitted. "No one has ever touched me before. Not like that." She swallowed hard, her eyes darting back to his. "You made me feel different." Daniel's heart pounded. Her words stirred something inside him, something dangerous but also exciting. He could see how her hands trembled, how her voice wavered. But there was no hatred in her eyes, only confusion, shyness, and something deeper. He realized she was just as shaken as he was, and that meant their story was only beginning. Suddenly, heavy boots echoed down the street. Lyra gasped and stepped back, her eyes wide with fear. "Guards," she whispered. "If they see me here, they will think I betrayed my people." Daniel's chest tightened. He knew the punishment for meeting a human in secret would be harsh. "Go," he whispered urgently, "before they find you." Lyra hesitated, her eyes locking on his one. Last time, her blush deepened until her whole face glowed. "Thank you for not hating me," she whispered, then turned and vanished into the shadows. The guards marched past a moment later, not noticing a thing. Daniel sat back down, his hands shaking. His mind raced with questions. Why had she risked coming to him? Why did her voice sound so soft, so warm when she spoke to him? The night grew silent again, but Daniel could not sleep. Her words repeated in his head, her eyes, her blush, her trembling voice. They all haunted him. He realized he had crossed into something forbidden, something dangerous, but at the same time, something beautiful. And deep in his heart, Daniel knew this was no simple accident anymore. This was the start of a connection that could change everything. The next day, the settlement felt heavier than usual. The alien streets, normally buzzing with trade and laughter, seemed tense. Everywhere Daniel walked, eyes followed him, whispers spread like fire. He heard his name mixed with words like shame, bold, and forbidden. It was clear. What happened with Lyra had turned into something much larger. Daniel tried to keep his head down, but it was impossible. Children pointed at him. Elders muttered curses. Guards tightened their grip on weapons when he passed. No matter where he went, he could not escape their stares. The worst part was knowing Lyra was at the center of it too. He had seen her face, her blush, her trembling lips. And now he wondered if she was suffering for something that wasn't her fault. Later that evening, Daniel slipped into a quiet corner of the market. He thought maybe he could buy some food in peace, but when he reached for a piece of alien bread, the merchant pulled it away. "We don't serve shameless humans," the man spat. Daniel froze, shocked. Another merchant sneered, "Go back. To your kind, human, you touched one of ours." Laughter followed, sharp and cruel. Daniel clenched his fists but said nothing. He walked away hungry, but angrier than before. That night he returned to his small home, sitting in the dim light of a lantern. His mind wrestled with questions. Why didn't Lyra hate him? Why did she risk coming to him the night before? And why did her face burn with blush every time she looked at him? Just then, a knock echoed at his door. Daniel's heart leapt. He already knew who it was. He opened the door, and there she stood. Lyra, her cloak wrapped tightly around her small bum. Her eyes glowed faintly under the moonlight, her cheeks already tinted purple. "Why are you here again?" Daniel whispered, worried. "If the guards see you, they'll—" "I don't care," she interrupted softly, her voice trembling. "I had to see you." Daniel stared at her, stunned. He stepped aside and let her in, closing the door quickly. Lyra stood nervously inside, fidgeting with her hands. Her blush deepened as she spoke. "They say you ruined me," she whispered. "That I should be ashamed." Her voice cracked. "But I don't feel ashamed." Daniel's chest tightened. He took a slow step closer, searching her eyes. "What do you feel then?" he asked quietly. Lyra's lips trembled, her eyes lowering. "I feel different," she admitted. "No alien has ever made me feel this way." Her hands gripped her cloak tighter as if she was holding herself together. "When you touched me, I should have hated you. But instead—" Her blush flared, glowing deeper than ever. "I cannot stop thinking about it." Daniel's breath caught in his throat. Her honesty shocked him. He had expected fear, anger, maybe even hatred. But instead, here she was, trembling and blushing, confessing something no one else dared to say. He reached out slowly, placing his hand gently on the table beside her. "I never wanted to hurt you," he said softly. "I know," she whispered back, her eyes finally meeting his. "And that's why I don't hate you." For a moment, silence filled the room. Only the sound of their breathing remained heavy and unsteady. Daniel felt the tension pulling them closer, but before anything could happen, a loud voice roared outside. "Open this door, by order of the council." Lyra gasped, her face draining of color before flushing even darker. Daniel rushed to her side, whispering urgently, "Hide, quickly." She slipped behind a curtain, her small figure trembling in the shadows. Daniel opened the door slightly, and two alien guards stood there, their armor gleaming. "Human," one growled. "You are summoned by the council." Daniel's stomach dropped. "What for?" he asked, though he already knew. The guard sneered. For dishonoring our kind. They seized his arm and dragged him into the street. The whole settlement gathered to watch. Some spat at him, others shouted curses, and all the while, Daniel's eyes searched the crowd for Lyra, but she was nowhere to be seen. At the council chamber, the air was thick with judgment. The elders sat high above, their robes heavy with tradition. One of them raised a hand. The human has broken our code, the elder declared. He touched what should never be touched. He humiliated our daughter before all. The crowd erupted with shouts of agreement. Daniel stood firm, his fist clenched. I never meant to humiliate her, he shouted. It was an accident. But his words were drowned in the noise. The council silenced the crowd with a gesture. Still, the elder said coldly, the girl blushes every time she looks at you, proof of her shame. Daniel's chest tightened. Shame? Is that what they called it? He remembered the way she whispered to him, the way she said she did not feel ashamed. It wasn't shame, it was something else, something no alien here understood. The council continued. You will be judged soon, the elder declared. Until then, you remain under guard. Daniel was dragged away, the crowd cheering his capture. But in the shadows at the edge of the chamber, a pair of violet eyes watched. Lyra stood hidden, her hands pressed to her chest, her cheeks glowing purple. She wanted to scream, to tell them he was innocent, but her voice caught in her throat. Instead, she whispered softly to herself, I don't hate him. I can't hate him. And as the guards pulled Daniel away, he caught a glimpse of her. Their eyes locked for only a second. Her blush burned brighter than ever, and in that single look, Daniel understood. This was no accident anymore, no shame. This was something forbidden, something dangerous, but something real, and it was only just beginning. The night was cold when Daniel was taken to the guard barracks. The room smelled of iron and dust, its walls lined with glowing crystals. Chains were not placed on him, but 2 armed guards stood at the door, watching his every move. He sat on the floor, his thoughts heavy. The council had already decided he was guilty in their eyes. And yet, it was not the judgment that haunted him, but Lyra's trembling eyes. He could still see her standing in the shadows, her cheeks burning with blush, her lips unable to speak. Hours passed, silence pressing down like a weight. Suddenly, the door creaked open, and a tall alien officer entered. His armor shone black under the dim light, his face hard and cruel. This was Captain Roan, commander of the settlement guards. He walked slowly toward Daniel, each step heavy, deliberate. Human, Roan said, his voice low. You have caused trouble in our home. Daniel kept his gaze steady, refusing to show fear. I didn't do anything wrong, he answered. But Roan's lips curled into a sneer. You touched what no human should, the captain growled. You made our girl blush before all, and now the people whisper like fire in the wind. He leaned closer, his eyes sharp like blades. You will leave this world or you will not leave alive. Daniel's fists tightened. I will not run from lies, he replied firmly. I told you, it was an accident. I never meant to hurt her. But his words only made the captain's sneer deepen. You think she defends you because of kindness, Roan hissed. No, human, she is too soft, too naive. He slammed his hand against the wall, the sound echoing like thunder. If you stay near her, you will bring her shame, and shame is worse than death for her people. Daniel's heart pounded. She doesn't feel ashamed, he said quietly. I saw it in her eyes. For a moment, Roan's expression flickered, almost uncertain, but then he stepped back, his face twisting with anger. Stay away from her, or I will make sure you vanish from this place forever. When Roan left, the silence returned, heavier than before. Daniel sat alone, his chest tight. The warning was clear, yet his heart would not let go. Every memory of Lyra, the way she blushed, the way she whispered, burned in him like fire. He knew he could not walk away, no matter how much they threatened. Late that night, the guards at his door changed shifts. In the quiet moment, A soft sound brushed against the window. Daniel turned and froze. Lyra stood outside, her cloak wrapped around her small figure, her eyes wide with fear. She pressed her hand against the glass, signaling for him to be silent. Daniel moved closer, his breath catching. "Why are you here?" he whispered through the crack in the window. "You should not risk this." Her voice trembled, but her eyes held steady. "I had to see you," she whispered back. "They will hurt you, Daniel. They will not stop until you are gone." Her blush deepened even as her words shook. "I cannot let that happen." Daniel's heart ached at her courage. "They already threatened me," he said softly. "Your captain told me to stay away from you." Lyra's lips pressed together, her eyes burning with emotion. "I don't care what they say," she whispered fiercely. "I know what I feel, even if I don't understand it fully." Her hand trembled against the glass. "When you looked at me, I didn't feel shame. I felt alive." Daniel's throat tightened, his chest heavy with unspoken feelings, but before he could answer, heavy footsteps echoed down the hall. Lyra gasped, pulling her cloak tighter. "I must go," she whispered, panic flashing in her eyes. "Promise me you won't give up." Daniel pressed his hand against the glass where hers had been. "I promise," he whispered. Her face flushed deep purple, and then she vanished into the shadows once more. Moments later, Captain Roan returned, his sharp eyes scanning the room. Daniel forced himself to stay calm, hiding the trace of what had just happened. But inside, his heart raced. He knew this was no longer just about his survival, it was about protecting her too. The guards might see her blush as shame, but Daniel knew the truth. It was not shame. It was something forbidden, something beautiful, and he would not let them destroy it. The next morning, Daniel was dragged to the council again. This time the chamber was full. Elders, guards, and half the settlement had gathered. The air crackled with tension. Captain Roan stood before the elders, pointing at Daniel. "This human has corrupted one of ours," he declared. "He must be exiled, or worse." The crowd shouted in agreement, voices rising like thunder. Daniel stood tall, his eyes scanning the sea of faces. And there, near the back, was Lyra, hidden beneath her cloak. Her eyes locked on his, her cheeks glowing bright. She was trembling, but she was there. Daniel drew strength from that single look. He straightened his shoulders, ready to face whatever came. If they wanted him gone, they would have to fight for it, because he had already decided he would not leave her behind. The council chamber emptied slowly after the long hearing. Daniel was pushed back toward the guard barracks, his wrists tied loosely. The crowd outside roared with anger, shouting words that burned his ears. "Exile him," they cried. "Send the shameless human away." But beneath all the shouting, Daniel caught sight of something else. Lyra, hiding under her hood, slipping silently behind the crowd, her eyes fixed on him. That night, the guards grew careless. They locked Daniel in a small room at the edge of the barracks. The place was dark, lit only by a dim crystal in the wall. Daniel sat with his back against the cold stone, his body tired, but his mind restless. The echo of Lyra's gaze haunted him still. He closed his eyes, and all he could see was her blush, her trembling lips, her voice whispering in the night. Then he heard a sound. Soft, careful footsteps outside his door. His heart jumped, and he rose quickly. The door creaked, and to his shock, it opened. There she was, Lyra, standing small in the dim light, her cloak pulled tightly around her frame. Her cheeks flushed instantly as their eyes met. "Lyra?" Daniel whispered in disbelief. "What are you doing here?" She closed the door behind her, pressing her back against it. Her breath came fast, her eyes darting nervously. "I should not be here," she whispered. "If they catch me, I will be punished." Her voice shook, but her eyes locked onto his with rare determination. "I don't care anymore, Daniel. I had to see you." Daniel stepped closer, his voice soft. "You risk everything by coming here," he said. "You shouldn't." "I don't care." She cut him off, her voice breaking with emotion. For a moment she looked shocked by her own boldness, then lowered her eyes, her face burning deep purple. Her hands clutched her cloak tightly, trembling as she whispered, "They say you shamed me, that I should despise you, but I don't." Daniel froze, staring at her. Lyra's voice grew softer, but each word carried weight. "When the machine touched me, when you caught me before I fell, something happened inside me." Her violet eyes lifted, glowing with strange light. "I have never felt this way before. Never, not even once." Her blush deepened, her lips trembling. "I don't feel shame, Daniel. I feel something else, something stronger." Daniel's chest tightened, his breath shallow. "Lyra," he whispered, unsure what to say. He had never expected her to confess such words, and yet here she was, trembling, shy, and brave all at once. She took a step, closer, her eyes shimmering. "My people don't understand," she continued. "They only see dishonor, but I see you." Her voice shook. "And I can't stop thinking about you." Daniel's heart thundered in his chest. For a moment, the world outside ceased to exist. No guards, no counsel, no judgment. Only her, standing before him, cheeks glowing, eyes shining with emotion. He reached out slowly, afraid to frighten her. But when his hand hovered near hers, she didn't move away. Instead, her fingers trembled and then gently brushed his. The touch was soft, almost nothing, but it made her entire body flush bright purple. She gasped softly, pulling her hand back. "I shouldn't, but I can't help it," she whispered, her voice breaking. Daniel leaned closer, his voice low and steady. "You don't have to be afraid, Lyra," he said. Her eyes widened, shimmering with unspoken feelings. "I'm not afraid of you," she whispered. "I'm afraid of them." She turned her head away, tears forming in her eyes. "They will take you away from me. They will never let you stay." Daniel's fists tightened, his resolve hardening. "Then let them try," he said firmly. Her eyes snapped back to his, filled with surprise. "I won't leave you, Lyra, no matter what they decide." Her lips parted in shock, her blush glowing brighter than ever. For a moment, silence filled the room again, heavy with unspoken words. Then Lyra whispered, barely audible, "You mean it?" Daniel nodded without hesitation. "I mean every word." Lyra's hands trembled against her chest, her whole body shaking. Her eyes softened, and she gave the smallest, shyest smile. "I shouldn't feel this," she whispered. "But I do." Her confession hung in the air like fire, dangerous yet undeniable. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed outside, heavy and close. Lyra gasped, fear flashing in her eyes. "They're coming," she whispered, rushing to the door. Before leaving, she turned back, her face glowing with blush, her eyes burning with emotion. "I don't hate you, Daniel, I never will," she whispered quickly. Then she slipped, out into the night, vanishing into the shadows. The guards opened the door moments later, glaring at Daniel. They checked the room but found nothing unusual. Daniel sat back against the wall, forcing himself to look calm. But inside his chest burned with fire. Lyra's words echoed in his mind. Her confession was dangerous, forbidden, and yet, it gave him strength. For the first time, Daniel knew with certainty, this was not just survival anymore. This was love. The morning sky above the alien settlement was heavy and gray. The streets were silent, the markets closed, the people gathering in the great square. Today, the council would give judgment on the human. Daniel was pulled from his cell by two guards, their grip tight on his arms. They marched him through the streets while whispers followed him. "Exile him," voices muttered. "Shameful human." Children peeked from doorways. Elders shook their heads. And still the crowd grew. Daniel's eyes searched the gathering, his heart pounding. He did not see her at first, and fear coiled in his chest. Had they hidden her away? Had they forbidden her to come? But then, near the far edge of the square, cloaked in shadow, he saw her. Lyra, her violet eyes burning, her cheeks faintly glowing with that familiar blush. Their eyes met for only a second before the guards shoved him forward. But that one look gave him strength. Inside the great hall, the council sat high upon their stone chairs. The chamber was wide, lit by tall flames and glowing crystals. The air was heavy with silence, broken only by the murmurs of the crowd. "Captain." Roan stood at the center, pointing sharply at Daniel. "This human has corrupted one of ours," he declared. "He touched what should never be touched. And he made our girl blush before all." The crowd hissed in anger, stamping their feet against the floor. Daniel stood tall, refusing to lower his head. "It was an accident," he said firmly. "I never meant to hurt her." The head elder raised his hand for silence. His voice was cold, his eyes unyielding. "Accident or not, your actions carry consequence," the elder said. "Our people see dishonor in the girl's blush. They see shame in her eyes." Daniel clenched his fists, anger flaring. "That is not shame," he shouted, his voice echoing in the hall. "It's something you do not understand." The crowd roared in outrage. Guards moved closer, but the elder raised his hand again. "Silence," he commanded. Then he turned his gaze back to Daniel. "You will be exiled from this world, human, and you will never return." Gasps spread through the chamber. Daniel's chest tightened, but before he could respond, a voice rang out, trembling but strong. "No." The crowd turned, shock rippling through them. Lyra stepped forward from the shadows, her cloak falling away. Her face burned with a deep purple blush, her small frame shaking. But her voice carried through the hall. "He did not shame me," she cried. "He did not hurt me." The crowd erupted in shock, elders leaning forward in disbelief. Captain Rowan's face darkened with rage. "Lyra," he barked, "you will remain silent." But she shook her head fiercely, her violet eyes blazing. "I will not," she shouted, her cheeks glowing hotter. "He saved me. He caught me when I fell. He was kind to me." Her voice softened, breaking. "And when I blush, it is not shame. It is because of him." The chamber fell into stunned silence. Every eye turned to her, every whisper frozen in the air. Lyra's hands trembled as she held them to her chest. "I don't feel dishonor," she said, her voice shaking. "I feel something else, something none of you have words for." Daniel's heart thundered in his chest. For a moment he forgot the guards, forgot the council, forgot the judgment. All he saw was her, standing against her people, risking everything for him. The elder slammed his staff against the floor, the sound like thunder. "Enough," he thundered. "The girl has been corrupted by human lies." "She speaks madness," another elder hissed. Captain Roan stepped forward, his voice sharp. "Let me silence her, my lords." Daniel's blood burned. He pulled free from the guards with sudden strength. "You will not touch her," he roared, his voice shaking the hall. The guards lunged at him, but Daniel fought them off. The crowd screamed, chaos filling the chamber. Lyra ran toward him, her eyes wide with fear, her cheeks glowing bright. "Daniel!" she cried, reaching out her hand. Without thinking, he caught it, pulling her close. The council gasped in outrage. But in that single moment, the hall froze. A human and an alien girl stood together, hand in hand. Her blush burned brighter than ever, but her eyes shone with defiance. Daniel stood tall, his voice steady. "She is not ashamed," he declared. "She chooses this." The chamber exploded in shouts. Some screamed for punishment, others for exile. But a few, just a few, remained silent, watching with wide, uncertain eyes. For the first time, doubt had entered the council hall. Lyra clung to Daniel's hand, her whole body trembling. "They will never understand us," she whispered, her blush still glowing. Daniel squeezed her hand tightly, his voice low. "Then let them try." The elders banged their staffs, shouting for order. "Captain." Rowan drew his blade, stepping toward them with fury. "This ends now," he growled. But Daniel did not back down. He pulled Lyra behind him, his stance firm. If they wanted to end it, they would have to go through him first. And as the flames flickered on the chamber, walls and the council roared in rage, Daniel knew one thing with unshakable certainty. He was not fighting for his life anymore. He was fighting for her. The council chamber shook with chaos. Elders slammed their staffs, the crowd roared, guards shouted, and Captain Roan raised his blade high. But in the center of it all, Daniel stood firm, one hand gripping Lyra's trembling fingers. Her blush, glowed brighter than ever, her violet eyes wide with fear. But she did not let go. He stood like a wall in front of her, ready to face whatever came. "Step aside, human," Roan growled, his voice like thunder. "You have brought enough shame. Do not make this worse." Daniel's eyes locked on the captain's, unflinching. "If you want to take her," he said, his voice steady, "you'll have to go through me first." Gasps echoed across the chamber. No human had ever spoken so boldly before the council. Roan sneered, his blade gleaming under the firelight. "You think you can protect her against all of us?" Daniel tightened his grip on Lyra's hand. "I don't think," he said firmly. "I know." The crowd erupted with shouts, some calling him insane, others screaming for punishment, but in the noise Lyra's small voice whispered behind him. "Daniel." He turned his head slightly and their eyes met. Her blush burned hotter, but her lips curved into the faintest smile. "I'm not afraid when you're with me," she whispered. Those words gave him strength. He stepped forward, pulling her, with him facing the council and the captain. "You call her blush shame," he shouted, his voice carrying through the hall. "But I see the truth." His chest rose and fell with fire. "She is not ashamed. She is alive. She is free. And she chooses me." The crowd fell into stunned silence for a heartbeat. The elders looked at one another, uncertain. For the first time, doubt cracked their mask of authority. Captain Roan snarled, breaking the silence. "Lies," he spat. "Her words mean nothing. She has been poisoned by you." But before he could strike, Lyra stepped forward beside Daniel, her voice shaking but loud. "No," she cried. "My words mean everything." Her small hands clutched Daniel's tightly. "My people may not understand, but I do. I am not broken, I am not shamed, I am choosing him." The entire chamber gasped. Her voice echoed louder than the council's, louder than the guards, louder than the people. The girl they called dishonored had stood against them all, her cheeks glowing, her eyes bright with fire. Daniel's chest swelled with pride. This tiny alien girl had more courage than any warrior he had ever known. Roan's rage boiled over. He charged forward, his blade flashing in the firelight. The guards moved with him, the crowd screaming in shock. But Daniel did not step back. He swung the nearest torch from the wall, holding it like a weapon. Its flames hissed in the air, sparks scattering across the floor. "Stay back," he roared. "I will not let you touch her." The clash froze the chamber, guards halted, unsure, the elders shouted in fury, and the people whispered in awe. Never had a human dared to defy them so openly. Never had anyone stood with such fire in their eyes. In that moment, Daniel was no longer just an outsider. He was a storm, a man willing to fight an entire world for one girl's blush. Roan snarled but did not move closer. The torchlight flickered across his armor, across his furious eyes. He saw the determination in Daniel's stance and the unshakable truth in Lyra's trembling defiance, and for the first time he hesitated. Behind him murmurs spread through the crowd. Some whispered in anger, but others whispered something different. "Maybe he speaks truth," one voice said. "Maybe her blush is not shame," another murmured. The seed of doubt had been planted. The elders slammed their staffs again, their voices sharp. "This is madness," one cried. "We will not allow this." But Lyra's voice rang out, clear and strong. "Then punish me too," she declared, her small frame shaking but unbroken. "If you exile him, then exile me. If you destroy him, then destroy me as well." Shock silenced the chamber. Even the elders froze, their eyes wide. The people gasped loudly, unable to believe what they had just heard. Daniel turned to her in awe, his chest heavy with emotion. "Lyra," he whispered. She looked up at him, her cheeks glowing like fire, her eyes shimmering with tears. "I would rather face exile with you than live safe without you," she whispered. In that instant, Daniel knew. No council, no guards, no threats could change what they had now. He turned back to the chamber, raising his voice for all to hear. "Do you see?" he roared. "This is not shame, this is not dishonor, this is choice, this is love." The word echoed like thunder. Love. A word that had never been spoken in this chamber. Not between human and alien, not in such defiance. The crowd fell silent, The elders struck dumb. Even Roan's blade lowered for a moment. Lyra squeezed Daniel's hand tightly, her face glowing, her heart pounding. Together, they stood unbroken. Finally, the head elder rose, his voice shaking with fury and uncertainty. "This council will not decide today," he declared. "Take them away. Both of them." The guards hesitated, unsure, the people whispering louder. Now Daniel pulled Lyra close, his voice low but steady. "They may take us," he whispered, "but they will never break us." Lyra leaned against him, her face burning purple, her lips trembling in a soft smile. "Let them laugh," she whispered. "I will keep blushing only for you." And as the guards closed in, as the council shouted for order, Daniel and Lyra stood hand in hand, the human who dared defy the council, and the alien girl who chose him. Their story was no longer an accident, no longer a shameful whisper. It was the beginning of something greater, something forbidden, but unstoppable. And in Lyra's endless blush, Daniel saw the proof of a bond no council could erase.